aggressive things I'd ever seen, and I work in tech. But Beverly wasn't done. The trespassing escalated into what I can only describe as performance art. One Saturday morning, I looked out my window to see Beverly marching across my lawn, wearing a reflective safety vest she had clearly ordered off the internet. She was accompanied by a man she loudly introduced to my neighbors as our architectural compliance marshal. This marshal turned out to be her nephew Kyle, whose last job, according to his Instagram bio, was influencer. Kyle was holding a tape measure like he'd never seen one before, while Beverly directed him to affix red tape to various parts of my deck. Together they declared the ramp condemned. I walked outside and calmly asked what specific building code they were citing. Beverly's face turned the color of a ripe tomato, and she snapped that it was Neighborhood Ordinance Article 9 section, then paused, clearly having lost her place. The one about slopes. Kyle nodded seriously, though he was holding the tape measure backward. That's when I made a decision. I was tired of being harassed. I was tired of finding Beverly in my bushes. And Moose deserved better than this nonsense. So I did what any exhausted introvert with a background in problem-solving would do. I pulled a building permit with the city, hired a licensed structural engineer, and started planning something spectacular. If Beverly wanted to play games about my wooden ramp, I would give her something truly worth complaining about. I went from a simple ramp to a fully enclosed, weatherproof, whisper-quiet dog elevator with safety interlocks, emergency stop buttons, a paw press call button at both levels, and, because Moose deserved to travel in style, a tiny chandelier. Examined every detail, praised the engineering, stamped the permit, and told Moose he was a distinguished gentleman. When Beverly saw the elevator for the first time, her eye twitched so hard I thought it might change zip codes. But Beverly Hartwell was not someone who accepted defeat gracefully. Within 24 hours of the elevator's installation, she had bulk emailed the entire neighborhood, claiming my pet escalator, which wasn't even the correct type of machine, violated something she called line of sight tranquility. She followed this up with a formal complaint to the city, alleging I had built a commercial freight hoist for the purpose of launching drone deliveries from my residential property. The city inspector called me, laughed for a solid minute, and told me to ignore her. But ignoring Beverly was about to become impossible. 3 nights later, at 2 in the morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing with notifications from my security system. I pulled up the camera feed and watched in real time as Beverly Hartwell, still wearing that ridiculous reflective vest, crept around the side of my house and flipped my electrical breaker. My heart dropped. Moose had been sleeping on the deck, and I'd trained him to use the elevator to come inside if he woke up. I ran downstairs and found exactly what I'd feared. Moose was trapped mid-elevator, suspended between floors because Beverly had cut the power to shut down the contraption. I immediately called 911. Fire and rescue arrived within minutes, restored power under emergency protocols, and carefully brought Moose down. He was fine, just confused, but I was furious. The responding firefighters documented everything. They reviewed my doorbell camera footage, noted the city, permit posted clearly on my deck like a gold star, and then had a very serious conversation with Beverly, who had apparently stuck around to watch the chaos she'd created. The fire captain explained to her, in the most professionally withering tone I've ever heard, that interfering with permitted safety equipment was a serious offense, especially when an animal was trapped inside. A police officer arrived shortly after and read, Beverly what he called the neighborhood-friendly version of the Riot Act, while Moose disembarked from his elevator like a cruise passenger, completely unbothered. The HOA called an emergency meeting 4 days later. Beverly strutted into the community center conference room with a 3-ring binder as thick as a ham, ready to prosecute me in the court of beige carpet and folding chairs. She had printed screenshots, highlighted bylaws, and a PowerPoint presentation titled, The elevator problem, a comprehensive analysis. I brought the city inspector, my structural engineer, the fire department report, and a USB drive labeled Beverly versus Electricity. The HOA board looked tired before we even started. Beverly launched into her presentation, but the board president cut her off and asked me to present my case first. I kept it simple. I showed the city permit. The inspector explained that the elevator met all residential lift guidelines, exceeded safety requirements, and was completely legal. Then I played the security camera footage. The room went silent as we all watched Beverly creeping through my yard at 2 in the morning, approaching my electrical panel and whispering, "Take that." Moose before throwing the breaker. There were audible gasps. Someone said, "Oh my God," loud enough for everyone to hear. The inspector added that anyone disabling the elevator again would face city fines for tampering with permitted safety equipment. The police officer who had responded that night stood up and explained that filing false complaints and tampering with electrical service could lead to criminal charges. Then the HOA treasurer cleared his throat and dropped the real bomb. He said that the association's insurance carrier had reached out with concerns about liability related to the president conducting what they called unauthorized night operations on member property. Beverly's face went pale. She blinked rapidly, like her brain was buffering, trying to process how this had all gone so wrong. The board president called for a vote. Within minutes, Beverly Hartwell was removed as HOA president, pending a formal ethics review, which is Suburban code for pack your pearls and go home. The consequences arrived in writing 1 week later. Beverly was permanently banned from entering any homeowner's yard without written permission. She owed a $2,000 special assessment to cover the association's legal consultation fees. And in the most poetic twist of justice I could have imagined, she was required to perform community service by assisting the city's pet accessibility program, installing ramps at the animal shelter every Saturday morning for 6 months, supervised by the same inspector who had called Moose a distinguished gentleman. When Beverly received the letter, according to my neighbor who was present, she sat down on the curb outside the community center and didn't move for 10 minutes, just staring at the paper in complete disbelief that her crusade had ended in total defeat.